Stop seeking and start shining. Welcome to a 22-minute bite-sized experiential session created to activate and empower your soul's unique purpose, which is not a destination, but it's a magical daily odyssey. Your moment to shine is here, and I'm your host, Julie Suen. Aloha, and welcome to another episode of Shine, 22-minute soul purpose activations. Today, I'm honored to be joined by one of my teachers in a healing modality called Arcturian Healing Transmissions. With every episode, I like to lead in with a mantra. So I'm going to put Gene on the spot and ask him if he has a mantra he wants to share with us to start off the show.
Well, that's great. Well, the one that's coming to mind is actually a Tibetan Buddhist mantra. It's in Sanskrit, but I'll just say it and then kind of explain maybe a portion of it, or we can say it a couple times. But it's Tayata Om Bakanza Bakanza Maha Bakanza Ranza Somagate Soha. I'll just say it one more time. Tayata Om Bakanza Bakanza Maha Bakanza Ranza Somagate Soha. And that was one of my inspirations, the Medicine Buddha, initially, and still now, getting onto the spiritual path. But I don't know if you want me to stop there and can go from there, or if you want me to unpack it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm really feeling the energy of it. So first, would you lead us into it? And then so we can repeat after you. And then if you wish, we can unpack a little bit more about this mantra.
Oh, sure. Okay, I'll say a couple words and then give some space for the repetition. So it's
Awesome.
Om, Tayata Om Bakanza.
Om
Bakanza.
Bakanza.
And then you say it again, Bakanza.
Bakanza.
Maha Bakanza.
Maha Bakanza.
Ranza.
Ranza.
Somagate.
Somagate.
Soha.
Soha.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Oh, okay. That's beautiful. So thank you for tuning us into that. Is there anything else you want to share about that mantra before we move on to introducing you as our speaker today?
Yeah. The Bakanza is actually the word means suffering. So they repeat it 3 times. So it's suffering and then great suffering, the Maha. Many people know that term. And just as a way people who get inspired to be facilitators of healing, or which the Medicine Buddha would be a example of someone as a being dedicated to helping suffering on kind of all different planets, particularly this one. And the first level of suffering is what we usually think of, like people who might be in the hospital, or if we have an illness. The second suffering is the suffering of change. So anything that changes, there's this sense that we like to kind of keep things status quo or the way they are, particularly if it's pleasurable. And then the great suffering is actually what they call conditioned existence, sort of this idea that we're not aware that we're interconnected. We sort of sometimes see ourselves as separate, would be one level of understanding of that.
Yeah. For someone who is searching for a soul purpose, and I definitely feel like I've been on that journey, and at times it does feel like a suffering of not knowing, of like this yearning and struggle to be like, why am I here? And some people may even link that to their vocational paths, and really spending time, majority of their days in a job or a career, and maybe they don't feel like their soul resonates with that. would you frame it as one of these sufferings?
Yes, definitely. Any of the extra three. And then I think as one gets deeper into understanding sort of their existence and sort of how they're interacting with this sort of kind of beautiful playground that we call sort of this physical dimension, learning school. I think all three levels sort of are really touched on. And maybe that then also helps us to understand that everyone, all beings are in that same situation. And then it kind of turns outward and maybe a sense of compassion towards what others are going through.
Mm, yeah. Did you go through a process like that in your own path?
Yeah, well, I was in science, in neuroscience, and one of the big shifts was I was in a lab of a fairly, for sort of famous neuroscientist, and it was actually a couple. His wife was also equally famous, and had made major discoveries, and she was hit by a car, like just randomly, and died. And I think like within a couple of weeks, I went actually to a medicine Buddha initiation, and that I think was the sort of the shift into healing in a formal way. Of course, like science is also is also a way of healing, and I think that sense of the suffering, the first level, obviously was there, but also the suffering of change in particular, which we sometimes can call death or impermanence, was really kind of brought home in a big way.
Yeah. So really quickly going back to Jean's background, just going to briefly introduce Jean. So Jean has a PhD from Yale in neurobiology, and Jean is a healer, as well as facilitating many healing training around the world. Actually, many times Jean has led sacred pilgrimage to some very magical places around this planet. Um, and I actually met Gene the first time here in Hawaii when he facilitated in death and dying class. It was actually not the death and dying, although I did take that one. It was the one where we did psychopump. So that's my first time being introduced to Gene's work. Death really has a way of bringing us into focus of what is really important. Um, I like to share for myself, um, that's actually my awakening as well, is I was a junior attorney for this like insurance firm, and I noticed how I was really disconnected, starting to disconnect as a result of my practice of, quantifying people's injuries, quantifying people's lives with, a monetary number. And I asked God, I asked the universe for something to wake me up because I felt what I was doing and everything around me just felt so wrong at that moment. And it was immediately the next day when I saw a brochure lining up at Starbucks that led me to do a fundraising marathon for people who are dying of cancer, of leukemia. And I didn't know what I was signing up for. I was actually still a smoker at that time. And it was through meeting these people that I was training for this marathon with. They all had loved ones that died from cancer. Or one of them, I remember he was going to chemotherapy in between our running sessions. And that's what connected me again to, oh, wow, okay. And our life is not quantifiable. There's something really important here. I remember there was this boy who would come in and like kind of inspire us while we are training and stuff. He was 5 and he died. By the end of the training, he didn't make it. I think that really shook me. Like, I'm going to work with these partners who are, in their 60s and whatever, and we're here like doing this grind, like in this law firm, and then here's this little kid that's just so alive, so alive, and his life was 5 years.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was, yeah, really the first spark of my awakening process. Tell me what sparked yours.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a kind of very similar. Thanks for that beautiful story sharing. But a similar, just to finish the that process after my we call him the PI or physical principal investigator's wife passed. It was a recognition that yes, kind of life is short. We have limited time, and kind of need to focus on what really matters, and perhaps that is this link to the soul purpose, if you could say, what, and not sort of keep delaying it and being around the bush, so to speak, and maybe doing things that really didn't have that kind of full fire for and passion for, or maybe doing something for something else, some later goal. And so that was a bit of a turning point, and it led me because I was always really interested in healing, not necessarily physical based healing, but I was trying to fit this purpose of healing into something I think was respectable, which was, of course, would be medicine, science, sort of to the outer world. And so that worked, and for what it was worth, but it wasn't really fully, I think, in alignment, if you would say, with my soul purpose, or where I really felt very connected. And so that's why I started to explore things that I really had a passion for, and which led me to that Medicine Buddha retreat, which was sort of more kind of what I was really inspired by, if you want to call it soul or spiritual healing, energy healing.
Yeah. I know that now your focus, I guess, quote focus, is on Arcturian healing transmissions. Would you say that's kind of your key healing modality?
Oh, yes, yes. I would say that would be kind of like the full-time focus now. Is the Arcturian.
What spawned that? Yeah, what spawned that?
Yeah, that was an evolution, I would say, kind of in a nutshell. It went from energy healing, after that Medicine Buddha retreat, I started to go to various energy healing trainings, and that was like a bridge to then maybe more spiritual practices, particularly like shamanic practices. And what opened up then was also this sort of cosmic dimension, maybe like star dimension, which led to focusing or exploring this idea of Arcturian energies and beings, which I would say is kind of in the same realm of spiritual beings like angels, but a little bit on the more cosmic or star kind of flavor.
Would you consider yourself a star being?
Yeah, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I would have to say that would be probably pretty accurate.
Um, and I've heard the story before, but I would love to get you to share on it briefly. How did you get connected to the Arcturians?
Yeah, that was kind of also kind of something from a subconscious to conscious, semi-conscious to conscious. Uh, Kind of probably the source, or one of them, was I read a book before I started my graduate work by Joshua David Stone. And I was just interested in the more general spiritual aspect of it. But he does mention in there, and then as I kind of explored him later, that there's these various beings awakened. He called them maybe star or cosmic beings, and he listed a number of them. And I didn't have any frame of reference for it, so it kind of almost, just went into my subconscious. But I think that was a initial transmission. He mentioned the Arcturians and Pleiadians and Syrians. And then 9 years later, as I was taking these healing trainings, I kind of heard an intuitive voice that said I was Arcturian. And then, it was just kind of a random afternoon in my kitchen, actually. And I didn't even remember where I had consciously read that word until kind of backtracking. And so then moving forward, I was always keeping that in mind, and then maybe guide it to these, over maybe 3 or 4 years to these various ways to kind of explore what that meant.
How were you invited to start these transmissions?
hmm Yeah, it was interesting. Well, one of those ways was through shamanic, like a shamanic training. So I eventually connected to the Arcturians consciously through shamanic journeying, which maybe people in the audience are familiar with or practice themselves, or, could be looked up. It's just a way to work with non-physical realities, by altering your state of consciousness. And there's other ways to do it, like meditation and maybe active imagination. And so from there, someone asked, who also was Arcturian based, asked if I would be willing to like do just an evening program on the Arcturians. And that sort of opened it up to like being sort of creating a space for that energy and consciousness to come through for healing purposes. And that sort of spawned the kind of this focus on really a connection to healing energies that allow us, like with the theme of this podcast, to kind of reconnect to our soul mission, who we are.
Do you feel like you're on purpose?
Yeah, yeah. I feel really natural when I'm doing this work, and like I mentioned, now it's kind of more really 100% focused on healing or some aspect of helping others through kind of energy or frequency work. So it feels very natural, not very effortful. Like it doesn't take a lot of grinding. I'm not sure if we use that word, but so they're just coming naturally out of me. So I guess I would say the affirmative on.
For somebody who's seeking for their soul purpose, at any part of their journey, at any level of that word, do you have a piece of guidance that you would
Mhm.
like to share?
Oh yeah. Well, first I think to acknowledge their courage, courage for seeking that. Because they're like I was mentioning, this sort of trying to fit into something that was more accepted, which is very noble, I think, to be in medicine or biomedicine and research. But and so some people that is their sole purpose, but I was sort of not quite aligned to that, and so I know understand what it means to kind of maybe have to take oneself out of, or at least pause to focus and address it consciously. What is my true calling and mission or desire, from a kind of higher, more natural place. So I think that acknowledgement of our courage to do that is the first, maybe, I guess, piece of advice is just that self-love. And then, like we were mentioning before we started, that it's sort of like a process rather than a one and done, like recognition, that kind of it's dynamic and every day brings sort of a new, I kind of look at like the physical world, like I mentioned, like a beautiful classroom, playground where we're able to learn things by interacting with people here, beings here, and experiences here. So second would be that it's a process, that it's always going to be something we're adjusting to, much like a plane adjusts to a location by slight changes in its course, or like a GPS kind of always telling us maybe if we went this way, then we can go this way to kind of stay on course.
Yeah. So our purpose is a sacred and magical pilgrimage in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a few minutes left, and I don't know if that's sufficient time for us to maybe experience, for those who have not experienced the Arcturian energies that you share through your healing light transmissions. Can you share that with us, even just, with a few minutes time?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's various frequencies are codified so far. And of course, just connecting with the Arcturians, you don't really need that codification. But there's one kind of maybe appropriate. It's called Arcturian Blueprint Activation. It sort of connects us to our soul blueprint. So a lot of people here are probably familiar with receiving energies, but if you are new to it, I'll just sort of kind of start the process. I'm usually kind of in a meditative state, but I'll say, the energies are starting, and maybe say this Arcturian Blueprint Activation is starting, and then you can just see what you feel. It'll be like 2 or 3 minutes.
Sounds great. Thank you, Gene.
Okay, all right. So if you wanted to set your intention for the energies, maybe it's just to be open to all the great possibilities, or maybe you're trying to manifest your soul mission in a very specific or general way, connecting to it. Or maybe it's abundance and prosperity on all levels. Yeah, so we're starting the opening of the Arcturian Blueprint Activation frequency. And I'm usually silent as it's coming across, and you can just tune into what you feel or notice. We're continuing to channel a deeper level of the Arcturian Blueprint Activation. This frequency helps us to align to our divine blueprint, or information about what's most in alignment with our soul path or life path. And finally, we're entering a third, deeper cycle. Maybe you can, if you like, enjoy the stillness, not necessarily holding on to any particular thought or feeling. And that brings the session to a close, and you can just gently come back to your physical body. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
I feel my thoughts are cleared immediately from that transmission. That's the first thing I want to share. But it's a very potent transmission, and I've received it before. I hope our listeners enjoyed that transmission. And I will definitely include in the show notes additional information on how one may work with Gene if you are interested. I like to remind all listeners that if you go onto my website, www.juliesuen, Suen is spelled Suen.com, you may subscribe to my email list where I will send out updates as well as gifts from our guests from every episode, going straight to your email inbox, and additional information on these speakers. So I'd like to thank Jean. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you, listeners. I look forward to connecting with you again next Thursday on Shine, 22 minutes. No, approximately 22 minutes. So, purpose activations. Aloha. Hey there, listeners. I have some exciting news. I am introducing Shine Podcast's first giveaway. Joining is a breeze, and you won't want to miss your shot at winning some fantastic prizes. Our first giveaway includes a transformative personal healing session featuring Arcturian Healing Transmission and Arcturian Blueprint Activation by me. Are you intrigued? Discover more about your chances to snag this incredible opportunity simply by subscribing to my email list on juliesuen.com. Easy, right? Happy listening and keep shining, my friends.